Hello, it is 8 a.m. local time here in Hanoi, and you're tuning into VTV News. In the following, we'll take a look at the headlines for this bulletin. Prime Minister hold talks with Philippine President. The U.S. House of Foreign Affairs Committee discusses East EC issues. And later on, foreign banks remain confident of Vietnam's stability. We'll now begin with the top news here in our bulletin. Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Thanh Dung arrived in Manila, the capital city of Philippines, on Wednesday, beginning his official working visit at the invitation of Philippine President Benigno Aquino. At the talks held after the welcoming ceremony on the same day, the two leaders agreed to build a roadmap towards a strategic partnership between Vietnam and the Philippines.
During their discussions, Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Thanh Dung and Philippine President Benigno Aquino outlined specific measures to strengthen bilateral cooperative ties, especially in the fields mentioned in the 2011-2016 Action Plan. The two leaders also settled on an implementation of all agreements between the two countries in terms of defense and security cooperation. Maritime cooperation was also a key element of the talks. Furthermore, they agreed to boost cooperation in terms of economy, trade and investment. The trade turnover between the two countries is expected to reach $3 billion in the next 2 years. Moreover, the two leaders also agreed to build a roadmap towards their strategic partnership for the sake of each country, as well as for the peace, stability, cooperation and mutual development of the entire region. Apart from bilateral relations, the two leaders discussed regional and international issues and committed to taking definitive steps towards building solidarity and a strong ASEAN in 2015. Regarding tensions in the East Sea, the Vietnamese Prime Minister and the Philippine President shared the serious concerns over China's violation of international law and the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, 1982.
Particularly serious is China's placement of an illegal oil rig and their deployment of escort ships deep within Vietnam's continental shelf and exclusive economic zone. This threatens peace, stability, security, safety and freedom of navigation within the East Sea. Our two countries have voiced our opposition as well as calling upon the international community to continue to do the same. We have demanded China's cessation of the above-mentioned violations and full implementation of the UNCLOS 1982, as well as the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the ECD, or DOC. This is with an aim to complete an official code of conduct in the EC or COC as soon as possible.
Collaborative activities between the Philippine Coast Guard and the Vietnam Coast Guard have increased over the years to include areas such as oil spill preparedness and response, mechanisms for search and rescue operations, and mechanisms for information exchange, such as the hotline communication mechanisms between the Philippine Coast Guard and the Vietnamese Coast Guard, aimed at protecting our marine resources and suppressing legal activities in the adjacency area between our two countries.
Prior to the talks, the Vietnamese Prime Minister laid a floral tribute at the Ho Chi Minh statue at ASEAN Park in Intramuros, Manila.
The 8th ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting, or ADMM8, concluded on Tuesday in the Myanmar capital of Nay Pyi Taw. After the meeting, the ministers also held an unofficial meeting with their Chinese counterpart, Chang Won-Kwan. At the meeting, ASEAN Secretary General Lee Lung-Ning informed the Chinese Defense Minister the result of the ADMM8. Regarding the current EC dispute, the ASEAN Defense Ministers stated that the sides need to deal with the matter through peaceful measures and comply with international law, as well as the DOC treaty China signed with ASEAN. The ministers also said that unilateral actions were unacceptable and asked China to stop and withdraw the oil rig. Now, the EC issue was at the heart of Tuesday's hearing of the Committee for Foreign Affairs of the U.S. House of Representatives. At the hearing, the Department of State presented its foreign policy for the Asia-Pacific region in 2015.
Representatives at the hearing voiced their concern over China's oil rig installment in the East Sea and its use of vessels to ram and spray water cannons at Vietnamese vessels. They deemed such unilateral actions by China a threat to peace and security in the region. According to Assistant Secretary of State Daniel Russell, the U.S. condemns China's aggressive acts in the East Sea.
As part of a broader destabilizing escalatory pattern of behavior in which China is advancing its claims through non-diplomatic and extra-legal means, we have made no secret of our strong belief that China must use diplomacy, not brute force. We think the issue is not how strong is China. We think the issue is how strong is China's legal claim in the territorial disputes.
Representatives said that unless the U.S. government stepped in to make China act according to international law, China might continue its provocative actions, building tension with U.S. allies like Japan and the Philippines.
President Obama, through his recent visit to North and Southeast Asia, made very clear, not only in word but in deed, how committed the U.S. is to stability in the region and America's determination to stand by the principle.
According to the White House's proposal, the United States will reserve $1.2 billion for the implementation of its foreign policy in the Asia-Pacific region for the fiscal year 2015. This level is comparable to the 2014 budget.
Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Pham Binh Minh held a telephone conversation with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry on Wednesday to discuss bilateral issues and the EC situation. Now, Minh announced Vietnam's decision to join the Proliferation Security Initiative, also known as PSI, and said that Vietnam was ready to cooperate with the United States to improve bilateral relations in the spirit of a comprehensive partnership between the two countries. Minh briefed his U.S. counterpart on recent developments concerning China's placement of oil rig Haiyang Shuyou 981 in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf. He said that the increase in the number of Chinese escort ships had escalated tensions in the area. For his part, John Kerry praised Vietnam for joining the PSI and said it was an important step towards the country's fight against the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. He added that joining the PSI would also increase global trade safety and peace in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, regarding the EC situation, Kerry appreciated Vietnam's restraint and goodwill, using peaceful measures and dialogue to de-escalate tensions. He went on to describe China's unilateral placement of an oil rig in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf as a provocative act. John Kerry reiterated the U.S. policy of settling EC issues peacefully, in line with international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS. Now, China's illegal placement of an oil rig and deployment of ships and planes within Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf have raised concerns among the international community. In the following report, the American experts on Southeast Asia will voice their opinion on this provocative and unilateral move. Amid the escalating tensions here in the EC, the Washington-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, is keeping a close eye on the situation, stating that China's move, quote, underlines Beijing's commitment to test the resolve of Vietnam, its ASEAN neighbors, and Washington. Beijing may also be attempting to substantially change the facts on the seas by moving, while it perceives Washington to be distracted. That does not, however, mean that the U.S. is not monitoring the situation.
Clearly, the U.S. has decided that Chinese actions in the South China Sea not only threaten the region, but they potentially threaten the entire global commons, the international order that the Law of the Sea represents. There are few main players out there speaking up who are not condemning China's actions over the last couple of years in the South China Sea.
The Stimson Center think tank highlights that the strongest legal basis to counter China's actions is that it infringes upon Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf under the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas.
The rationale that China uses, or the legal argument it makes, is that it's really basing its action on its control of the Paracel Islands. And so there's one small island in the Paracels that's closest to the Vietnam's EEZ that it apparently is using to make the assertion of a maritime space, But under the UNCLOS rules, a small island like that cannot generate a maritime space.
China's rationale is based on the 9-dash line, which without legalized evidence claims over 85% of the EC area. This, as CSIS advisor notes, is unclear, if not to say unrealistic.
The question for the Chinese is the legality of the 9-dash line. That's big for China, because that calls into question everything that they claim in the South China Sea. My hope is that in the face of more cases, for example, if Vietnam were to bring a case to the tribunal or the International Court of Justice, my hope is that the Chinese would feel under pressure to clarify their claims, even if they don't accept the case. And then they can make that claim clear, and then there is something to at least have a discussion about in the court.
This is exactly what the Philippines did in late March by filing nearly 4,000 pages of evidence, it is reported, to a UN tribunal hearing its case against China's territorial claim in the EC. China has refused to take part in the arbitration. Yet, as all three experts above agree, international law is Vietnam's strongest weapon at this time to protect its sovereignty. Prime Minister Nguyen Thanh Dung has laid out an action plan to support enterprises hurt by the recent incidents of public disorder in some localities, asking ministries and agencies nationwide to roll out the action plan guidelines as soon as possible. We have more details now in the following.
Under the Prime Minister's directives, the Foreign Ministry will be responsible for updating foreign countries on Vietnam's current situation, urging them to encourage firms to continue operating in Vietnam. People's committees in affected areas will work directly with each enterprise, lending support in administrative affairs and damage assessment. Prime Minister Dung also directed the Ministry of Finance to offer guidance to insurance companies to verify the damage and provide appropriate and prompt compensation. The ministry has asked tax and customs agencies to offer tax cuts based on the real losses incurred by firms. Where applicable, firms will enjoy a reduction in import and export duties, value-added tax, income tax, and special consumption tax. The Ministry of Labor, War Invalids, and Social Affairs will instruct areas to cover labor shortages in affected firms. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Public Security will offer preferential treatment for companies that incur damages and require additional foreign workers. Finally, the State Bank of Vietnam will instruct credit organizations to remove obstacles in transactions and loans in order to help affected businesses.
Continuing the same news line now, the State Bank of Vietnam held a meeting on Wednesday with foreign credit institutions to discuss an action plan for the banking system. At the meeting, State Bank Governor Nguyễn Văn Bình confirmed that foreign banks will continue to enjoy favorable conditions in Vietnam.
In continuing At the meetings, representatives from all 44 foreign credit institutions in Vietnam were reassured by the State Bank governor that Vietnam's banking system remains stable despite the recent developments in the EC.
The financial markets, including the foreign exchange market and the gold market, have remained stable during the past few weeks. The whole banking system is operating normally and is able to withstand external difficulties.
Many foreign banks asserted that they continued to regard Vietnam as a long-term investment destination.
We will encourage our Chinese customers to keep investing their money in Vietnam. Thanks to support from the Vietnamese government and the State Bank, we intend to continue our operations in Vietnam.
As this year marks our 20th anniversary in Vietnam, I'd just like to comment that we look forward to receiving a renewal of our Hanoi branch license for the next 99 years, and I'd like to reiterate that we remain very committed to this market.
The State Bank governor further pledged to ensure maximum securities for credit institutions in Vietnam.
The State Bank is prepared for any problem that may arise. We will do our utmost to maintain the stability of the financial markets. We will also ensure the safety of bank assets and protect the rights of foreign investors in Vietnam. Our goal is to uphold Vietnam's favorable business climate.
During the meeting, the State Bank governor called upon all foreign banks to cooperate, thus keeping Vietnam's banking system stable for the mutual benefits of all parties.
Coming up here on our live edition of VTV News, Vice President attends the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia. And later on, we'll take a look at the limitations in preserving antique houses here in Vietnam.
Exotic Vietnam is an intriguing blend of many charms. This land is where all manner of stunning landscapes await like a visual feast, rivaled only by the beauty of its people and their abundantly rich tradition and culture. Here is where you can relive the past in richest color or live it up in the bright lights of the big city. With so much more to offer, Vietnam is simply unforgettable.
You're back here on VTV News Live. On Wednesday, Vice State President Nguyễn Thị Doan attended the 4th summit of the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia, also known short as CICA. Now, the summit was held in Shanghai of China and was attended by representatives from 25 other member countries and international organizations. Addressing the summit, Vice President Doan called upon Asian countries to make a concerted effort to promote dialogue, confidence building and cooperation for peace and stability across the continent. She shared her opinion that lack of confidence has been at the core of recent disputes in the region. Regarding the EC tensions, the Vice President affirmed Vietnam's commitment to pursuing peaceful solutions in accordance with international law. On the sidelines of the summit, Vice President Doan also held bilateral talks with leaders from Cambodia, Qatar, Sri Lanka, as well as others. A conference under the theme Role of Citizens in the Fight Against Corruption was held on Tuesday in Hanoi as part of the 2014 Vietnam Anti-Corruption Initiative Program, co-organized by the Government Inspectorate, the World Bank, and other partners.
Speakers at the conference stressed the importance of government support to help citizens build and raise awareness of policies regarding anti-corruption. Specifically, individuals and organizations who report corruption cases will be rightfully praised, compensated, and more importantly, protected. These policies will allow members of the public to take a more active role in the fight against corruption. Take, for example, the case of Huang Thị-Nguyệt, a medical technician who collected evidence and blew the whistle on a blood test scam at a public hospital that affected numerous patients.
In my personal opinion, anti-corruption is like a fierce battle. Without authority support and protection, people who dare to speak out like me may face repercussions.
If you want to encourage people to report corruption cases, we have to implement measures to ensure their safety.
International speakers at the conference also agreed that people are only motivated to voice up against corruption when they're offered adequate legal protection.
The other type of complaint are those from whistleblowers.
Authorities have to establish support mechanisms and policies for people who report corruption because they may face numerous threats. Once these policies are set up, it is important that citizens are informed about them to set their minds at ease when they consider reporting corruption activities.
Over the past 5 years, the Vietnam Anti-Corruption Initiative program has been providing support for numerous public initiatives. Since the beginning of this year, 19 initiatives have been awarded and granted financial support. And this move is expected to foster anti-corruption practices.
Now, antique houses play a vital role in preserving Vietnam's long-lasting village culture. However, the preservation of these houses face critical limitations in old towns across the country. Now, more to follow in the following report from a village near Da Nang Central City.
This is a 200-year-old house in Phong Nam village in Da Nang's Hoa Vang district. Decaying beams, peeling walls, and damaged roofs are common problems for many old houses in this area, and some are not even safe to live in.
Sống trong ngôi nhà của nó xuống cấp như thế này, bà có sợ không?
I've had to leave the house several times due to storms. It's too old. It was inherited from my grandfather and I really want to maintain it, but I cannot afford to.
In addition to financial issues, the maintenance of our houses often requires highly skilled workers and special materials, which makes the process even more difficult.
Severe weather conditions in this area takes its toll on the houses, and only skilled workers know how to repair them to a good standard. The cost of maintenance is too high for us.
Phong Nam village is well known for its old houses. In 2000, there were 10 houses over 200 years old in the village, but now there are only 3 left. And local authorities have been slow to react to the situation.
Local authorities are not offering any policies or assistance to support the preservation of these old houses. Most owners have major problems finding the funding, workers and materials needed for maintenance jobs.
Phong Nam is a popular tourist destination for visitors to Da Nang, so preserving these houses is essential to retaining the unique characteristics of this area. Maintenance can be a long process, and these wonderful old houses will only be restored if action is taken quickly.
In the following is our in-week edition of Vietnam Online.
Our first news of the day comes from Asia News. The newswire quoted Azerbaijani Economy and Industry Minister Shahin Mustafayev saying that Azerbaijan can be a window for Vietnam to the South Caucasus. This statement was made during the Azerbaijan and Vietnam Business Forum held in Hanoi on May 19th. The cooperation between the two countries has been developing fast. Azerbaijan opened its embassy in Vietnam last December, while the Azerbaijan and Vietnam Interparliamentary Friendship Group was established in Hanoi last November. Last October, Vietnam simplified the visa regime for Azerbaijani citizens, making it possible for Azerbaijani citizens to obtain a visa upon arrival at Vietnam's airports. VOV Voice of Vietnam reports that Vietnamese artists Lê Hồng Linh and Trần Phong have been accorded the prestigious distinction for being cited in the Who's Who masterpieces of modern contemporary photographers. Selections of their finest works are also included in a collection of over 360 photos of 180 photographers from 20 countries worldwide, published by the Photographic Society of Hong Kong. Publication of the collection is sponsored by the Photographic Society of America, the International Federation of the Photographic Art, and the UK's Royal Photographic Society. Vietnamese students won 2 awards at the 2014 Intel International Science and Engineering Fair held in the USA from May 11 to 16, according to the Ministry of Education and Training. The award winners are 2 students from Le Hong Phong High School in Ho Chi Minh City with a project electronic braille display for the visually impaired, and 3-member group from Hanoi Amsterdam High School with the entry lipid production by fungi grown on rice straw for potential biodiesel resource. More than 1,700 young scientists from 76 countries and territories around the world showcased their research at this year's event, which is the world's largest international pre-college science competition.
BuzzHub.vn has the first figure for today. Japan Itochu has proposed to construct a wharf to transport cereals at Liquid Port in northern Haiphong City on a public-private partnership or PPP model at a recent meeting with the Vietnam's Ministry of Transport. This project is expected to cover an area of 18 hectares with a total investment of approximately $150 million, which includes the construction of basic infrastructure worth around $40 million taken from official development assistance loan, and the construction and operation worth $110 million, with 30% taken from investors, and the remaining as a loan from Japan International Cooperation Agency or JICA. The capacity of the wharf is estimated to reach 3 million tons per year. By April this year, Vietnam had 16,323 valid foreign investor projects with a total registered capital of $237 billion, according to Deputy Minister of Planning and Investment, Đặng Huy Đông. Foreign investments have contributed to promoting technology innovation, improving production capacity and economic management in Vietnam, developing high-quality human resources while generating more jobs. Of the foreign investors, the Republic of Korea topped the list, with both newly registered and additional capital totaling $1.12 billion. It was followed by Japan and Singapore with $531 and $479.1 million, respectively.
Wrapping up our bulletin now is your updated weather forecasts. And that wraps up the news edition at this hour. We'll be back again at 3 p.m. local time, Hanoi, for more updated news. In the meantime, do log on to vtv4.vn to keep updated. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you more in a bit.